Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Victor. This is Jack. Jack, what do you got for us today?
Today, I'm going to make the argument that for the American people to get where they want to be with their rights being upheld and just for the government not to be terrible, that there is no solution available within the system that Americans have today to get to where they want to be.
Okay, but we live in people call it a democracy, but we have voting rights. Can't we vote in better people who will get rid of this system?
Right? Okay. Well, number one, I would say it depends on how much faith you have in elections. So, say in the last 20 years, both sides can point to multiple elections where when the results were had, they didn't have faith that it was on the up and up. So, in order to make that argument, you would have to say both that you have a lot of faith in elections, which probably means you're a very new voter, maybe, just looking at politics for the first time. But in general, the American people just don't have a lot of faith in elections. Also, you have to have a lot of faith in the actual political parties, the Republicans and Democrats, because they use the method of, at the primaries, they'll exclude really idealistic candidates and just plug all the money into the candidates who are for the machine, for the uniparty, who will work for the system. So by the time it gets to a general election, the chances of you having an actual candidate that you really want in wherever you live is extremely low. And then you have to have faith that the election will be legitimate. So it's several logical leaps you got to make of faith, we'll say, leaps of faith to get to where you could find a solution by voting your way out of tyranny, we'll say.
Okay. And if we can't vote new people, and you're saying there's zero chance that the current people can do the right thing by the American people?
Okay, well, there's not zero chance, but you look, in order to believe that, you would have to say that the people who are in power now in DC, that they are not following the Constitution right now, but maybe they'll make laws that will force them to. And if you believe that they are upholding the Constitution, we'll link a video below so we already discussed that. But it would take so much faith to say that they're not following the Constitution in any way, or when they want to, they do, we'll say. And then they'll also make laws. So a lot of the laws we need are to restrict politicians from doing certain things, like not upholding the Constitution or forcing them to with a penalty if they do not. But we're hoping that the same politicians who are doing those things will vote in those things in the legislative process. It would take blind faith.
And even if they did make new laws, who's to say that they're going to follow them if they're not following existing laws?
Correct.
Okay. So what about, is it possible that just your average citizen or a group of people could get together and maybe sue the government or sue officials that aren't following the Constitution and get some type of judicial support for the Constitution?
Okay, so that is a remedy that's available, but we find that when we're watching the judicial process, it's become highly politicized in a way that is totally not supposed to. And one of the examples that comes to mind is after the 2020 election, there was a lawsuit. A bunch of states sued, and a bunch of states countersued. So a lot of the states were in on it. And it's hearsay, but typically when they go in to discuss whether or not they're going to take a case to Supreme Court justices, they just go in private and nobody knows what happens in there. It's, their aides are outside. In this situation, for this case, the aides say that they overheard them actually yelling in there. And they were saying, but there'll be riots. So for example, if they heard the case even, not chose for Trump or whatever, if they even heard the case, there would be riots. So you want the people who are afraid of the consequences of them actually doing justice will be the ones who will stand in the gap and protect us.
Okay.
It would just take a lot of faith. And even if we had a solid Supreme Court now, I still wouldn't say that's a long-term solution because politicians could just come along and pad it. Just pad the court, just throw in 15 more members. if the Supreme Court justices were actually being effective, because the politicians, they want it how it is now.
Right.
We want to force them to change it. And if the judicial branch is not on board, they could just throw in more Supreme Court justices.
Okay.
Pack the court.
Okay, makes sense. So what about, I've heard solutions about, you need to start grassroots efforts and start local and, run for your city council and work your way up through the states and start reforming like at a grassroots level.
Okay. Okay, well, that's a good point as well. I also would encourage those things because I think depending on where you live, at the local level, a lot can be done for your community, but that's not going to get the major change that's going to get federal agencies, federal politicians, in DC to, you could make your state better, but the problems, some problems are on the state level, depending on the state you live in, but all of the major problems are at the federal level, so even if you've chosen to live in a good state and then you participate in your local, which I encourage you to do, but it won't solve the actual problems. Because when I say there's no solution within the system, there are minor solutions at the local level, but the major overarching things can't be fixed from the local level.
And even if you did manage to get one person voted in all the way from a grassroots level all the way to the federal level, that's one person out of, let's say, 535.
Right.
What are the odds of getting a majority of those people?
Right. And there you might find some examples at different times, of a few individuals. But even then, it's like when you go to get them into, when they're going from, say, the state Senate and they're trying to get into, say, the federal House, we'll say, at that point, they can still be blocked, like I said before, by their own party.
Right.
Just funneling funding because they know who's going to win and lose, and they know how much funding to get their candidates in.
So it just doesn't sound like there is a solution within the system.
That's my conclusion, that there's just no solution within the system. So we contend that there's no solution within the system. If you're thinking, well, maybe in 2 years or maybe in 4 years, yeah, things will go really bad for the next 2 or 4 years, but maybe in 2 or 4 years we can come to the solution. I think you're enabling the problem if you're thinking like that. And even then, you're probably thinking, well, in 4 years, maybe we'll take the lesser of two evils. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you to think outside of solutions within the system. Now, if you have a great solution within the system, put it in the comments because we'd love to hear it. There hasn't been one in 50 years, we'll say. But if you follow the logical path that we've taken, there is no solution within the system, and you have to rework your mind to get out of that, so that you can start actually helping to find the solution and getting to a place where you can withdraw consent from being governed by this system.
Thank you for watching the video. We appreciate your likes and your subscribes. If you have anyone who still is believing in, we'll get them next time with the voting or any of these other solutions, share this video with them. Maybe it'll help them open their eyes a little bit. Like Jack said, we love your comments, whether they're for us or against our opinions. We want to learn from you as much as you learn from us, and we'll see you next time.